What if I told you that right now, regardless of how hard you think you are working, you are only tapping into 40% of your true potential? Welcome to the summarized audiobook experience of Can't Hurt Me, Master Your Mind and Defy the Odds by David Goggins. This is not just a story about a man. It is a manual for the human soul. It is a raw, unfiltered look at how one man transformed himself from a depressed, overweight young man with no future into a U.S. Navy SEAL, an Army Ranger, and one of the world's top endurance athletes. But before we witness the glory, we must witness the darkness. Goggins does not believe in quick fixes. He believes in the calloused mind. Just as you callous your hands to protect them from friction, you must callous your brain to overcome pain, fear, and self-doubt. Let us begin the journey. Chapter 1. I Should Have Been a Statistic. David Goggins was born in 1975 in New York, but his childhood was not filled with the American dream. It was a nightmare. He lived in a clean, nice-looking home, but inside those walls, it was a prison. His father, Toughness Goggins, was a tyrant. Toughness owned a roller disco and forced his family, David, his brother, and his mother, to work tirelessly, often until midnight. But the labor was not the worst part. The violence was. David watched his father beat his mother senseless on a regular basis. If David tried to intervene, he was beaten too. He learned to hide the bruises. He learned to live in a constant state of fight or flight, which flooded his young brain with toxic stress. He suffered from nervous tics and a stutter. He was broken before he even started. Eventually, his mother found the courage to escape. They fled to Brazil, Indiana. They escaped the physical abuse of the father, but they ran headfirst into a new enemy: poverty and racism. In this small town, David was one of the few black children. He was called racial slurs regularly. He found hateful graffiti on his textbooks. He received death threats. Academically, he was failing. The trauma from his father had caused what he calls toxic stress, which literally inhibited his memory and learning capabilities. He cheated his way through school just to pass. By the time he was a teenager, David Goggins was lost. He was insecure, angry, uneducated, and terrified of the world. He was the definition of a victim. Key lesson: we all have a bad hand. You cannot control where you were born, who your parents are, or how you were treated as a child. But you have to acknowledge the trauma. Goggins teaches us that ignoring the past allows it to dictate the future. You must accept that your starting line might be miles behind everyone else's. That is your reality. Own it. Chapter 2. Truth Hurts. David managed to graduate high school, barely. He dreamed of joining the Air Force pararescue to become a hero, to change the narrative of his life. But there was a problem: the ASVAB test. This is the military entrance exam. Because he had cheated his way through school, he failed the test twice. He finally cheated his way into passing the third time and got into the Air Force. But then he faced a water confidence test. David was terrified of the water. He had sinker bones. During training, the doctors told him he had sickle cell trait, giving him a medical reason to quit. And he took it. He quit. He let his fear of the water dictate his choices. A few years later, David Goggins hit rock bottom. He was working as an exterminator, spraying for cockroaches in restaurants at night. He weighed 297 pounds. His diet consisted of chocolate milkshakes and donuts. One night, after getting off a shift, he sat down, turned on the TV, and saw a documentary on the Navy SEALs. He watched men suffering in the mud, carrying boats, freezing in the ocean. He looked at them, and then he looked at himself. The contrast broke him. He went into the bathroom and stared at his reflection. This moment is the birth of the accountability mirror. He didn't sugarcoat it. He didn't say, "You're big-boned," or "You're just going through a phase." He looked himself in the eye and said, "You are fat. You are lazy. You are a liar. You are uneducated." It was harsh, but it was the truth. Goggins realized that in today's society, we are too soft on ourselves. We surround ourselves with people who tell us what we want to hear, not what we need to hear. He decided that night to stop blaming his father, stop blaming racism, and stop blaming his bad genetics. Key lesson: the accountability mirror. To change your life, you must stop lying to yourself. Stand in front of a mirror. If you are overweight, admit it. If you are not working hard enough, say it out loud. Goggins started using Post-it notes. He would write his goals on them and stick them to the mirror. But not just goals, he wrote the steps needed to get there. He realized that self-esteem doesn't come from affirmations. It comes from doing hard things. You earn self-respect through friction. Welcome back to the darkness. In part 1, we watched David Goggins transform from a broken man into a Navy SEAL candidate facing Hell Week for the 3rd time. Now, we enter the fire. Chapter 4, Taking Souls. Hell Week is designed to find your breaking point. It is a week of simulated combat, freezing cold surf, and boat races. Goggins was assigned to Boat Crew 2. This was the Smurf crew, the shortest men in the class. They were the underdogs. They were broken, tired, and suffering under the watchful eye of an instructor they called Psycho. Psycho hated Goggins. He wanted to break him specifically. He would scream, humiliate, and force the crew to exercise while others rested. The crew was falling apart. They were victims. But then Goggins flipped the switch. He remembered the concept of taking souls. He realized that Psycho was actually weak. Psycho needed the recruits to fail so he could feel powerful. Goggins rallied his boat crew. He told them, "We are going to win every single race today. We are going to destroy them." Something shifted. The men stopped feeling sorry for themselves and started getting angry. Anger, when focused, is a potent fuel. They launched their boat. They paddled like demons. They won the first race, then the second, then the third. With every victory, Goggins watched Psycho. The instructor went from screaming to silence. He looked confused. He looked defeated. Goggins wasn't just surviving the training, he was dominating the instructor psychologically. Key lesson: in any competitive situation, you must master the art of nonverbal dominance. When you are suffering, do not show it. When your boss, your teacher, or your rival puts pressure on you, do not buckle. Instead, work harder. Smile. Show them that their attempts to break you are only making you stronger. By refusing to give them the reaction they expect, weakness, you take their soul. You own the psychological space. Chapter 5, The Armored Mind. Goggins graduated BUD/S. He became a SEAL. But the war wasn't over. It just moved internal. He talks about the concept of the armored mind. Most people have a soft mind. When they face adversity, they look for an exit strategy. They question why they were there. An armored mind is different. It is callous. It doesn't ask why me. It asks what now. To build an armored mind, Goggins emphasizes the power of visualization. But this isn't the happy path visualization that most self-help gurus preach. He doesn't just visualize holding the trophy or crossing the finish line with a smile. He visualizes the pain. Before a big event, he visualizes his legs cramping. He visualizes the cold water hitting his face. He visualizes the moment he wants to quit. He lives through the suffering in his mind before it happens in reality. Why? Because when the pain actually arrives, it isn't a surprise. He has already been there. He has already formulated a plan to overcome it. This creates a callus over his fears. He also introduces the concept of the governor. Just like a car has a governor to limit its top speed, the human brain has a governor to limit our suffering. When you feel like you are completely exhausted, like you cannot take another step, your brain is lying to you. It is trying to protect you. Key lesson: when your mind tells you that you are done, that you are exhausted, that you cannot possibly go on, you are only at 40% of your body's capability. This is the 40% rule. The burning in your muscles, the doubt in your head, that is just the governor kicking in. You have a reserve tank of 60% left. Unlocking that reserve is painful, but it is where greatness lives. Chapter 6. It's not about a trophy. After serving in the SEALs and later the Air Force, Goggins faced a new tragedy. In 2005, several of his fellow SEALs were killed in Operation Red Wings in Afghanistan. The story depicted in the movie Lone Survivor. Goggins was devastated. He wanted to raise money for the children of the fallen soldiers. He decided to run the Badwater 135. It is considered the world's toughest foot race. 135 miles through Death Valley in the middle of summer. But to qualify, he had to run 100 miles in 24 hours. He signed up for a race called the San Diego One Day. He had not trained for running. He weighed over 200 pounds, powerlifting weight. He had no support crew, just a folding chair and some crackers. The first 50 miles were manageable. Then the wheels came off. By mile 70, he was in kidney failure. He was peeing blood. He had broken all the small bones in his feet. He sat in his chair, broken, bleeding, dying. He had 30 miles left. He had to finish. This is where he introduced the cookie jar. We all have a cookie jar. It is a mental reservoir of all your past victories, all the times you overcame obstacles, all the times you succeeded when you should have failed. Sitting in that chair, broken and bleeding, Goggins reached into his mental cookie jar. He pulled out the memory of losing 100 pounds in 3 months. He pulled out the memory of Hell Week. He pulled out the memory of surviving his abusive father. He reminded himself, I am David Goggins. I don't quit. I find a way. He stood up. He walked 1 lap, then another. Then he started running. He ran the final 30 miles on broken feet, fueled purely by the energy of his past triumphs. He finished the 100 miles in 19 hours and 6 minutes. Key lesson: the cookie jar. When life knocks you down, don't focus on how hard the current situation is. Focus on who you are. Remember your resume of failures overcome. Reach into your cookie jar and eat that energy. Remind yourself how badass you really are. Use your past success to fuel your present battle. But the race destroyed him. He was hospitalized. He had pushed past the 40% rule into a zone that nearly killed him. But he had proven something. The mind controls the body, not the other way around. You have witnessed the breaking of the body and the birth of the armored mind. Now we move beyond simple survival. We move into the realm of strategy, mastery, and the relentless pursuit of excellence. Welcome to Part 3. Chapter 7. The Most Powerful Weapon. David Goggins qualified for Badwater 135, the race through the furnace of Death Valley. But qualifying was one thing. Competing was another. He had destroyed his body to get in. Now he had to rebuild it to survive the main event. This chapter is not just about running, it is about learning. Goggins realized that brute force, simply pushing through, has a ceiling. To go further, he needed a new strategy. He needed to become a practitioner of pain, not just a victim of it. He began to study the course. He studied the heat. He studied his equipment. He realized that the most powerful weapon he possessed wasn't his legs or his lungs. It wasn't his SEAL training. It was his ability to control the conversation in his head when things went wrong. At bad water, things go wrong. The pavement is hot enough to melt the rubber off your shoes. You run through the night, hallucinating. Goggins faced moments where his body shut down completely. But unlike the first 100-miler, he was prepared. He stopped panic in its tracks. He removed the emotional reaction to pain. Instead of saying, "Oh God, this hurts, I'm dying," he shifted to a tactical mindset. My quad is cramping. Why? Sodium depletion. Solution? Take salt pills. Stretch. Move forward. He finished Badwater 135 in 5th place. A massive accomplishment for a man who was running on broken feet just months prior. But he wasn't satisfied. He knew he left effort on the table. Key lesson: the most powerful weapon against suffering is compartmentalization. Do not look at the whole 135 miles. That is too heavy for the mind to carry. Break it down. Focus on the next telephone pole, the next mile, the next hour. When you are overwhelmed by a massive task, shrink your world. Focus on the immediate step in front of you. Control your breathing. Control your internal dialogue. Quiet the panic. Chapter 8. Talent not required. People often look at Goggins and say, "Well, he's a genetic freak. He's special." In Chapter 8, Goggins destroys this myth. He tells you plainly, "I am not talented. I am obsessed." He details his daily routine, which is terrifying to the average person. He wakes up before dawn. He runs. He bikes. He stretches for hours. He studies. He works. There is no dead time in his day. He introduces the concept of scheduling the suffering. Most people claim they don't have time to work out, or to study, or to work on their side business. Goggins calls this a lie. He says we waste hours every day on social media, watching TV, or multitasking inefficiently. He advocates for a brutal audit of your time. He treats his day like a military operation. Every minute is accounted for. If he is running, he is only running. If he is studying, the phone is off. He also discusses the importance of being a practitioner. He wasn't naturally flexible. In fact, his muscles were so tight from stress and running that doctors told him his body was shutting down. So he didn't just stretch a little. He started stretching for 2 hours a night, every single night. He forced his body to adapt through sheer volume of work. He realized that talent is a spark, but obsession is the fire. You can beat anyone, even the most talented people in the room, if you are willing to outwork them, outsuffer them, and outplan them. Key lesson: the 24-hour audit. If you think you don't have time, you are lying to yourself. Goggins challenges you to document every single thing you do for a 24-hour period. Write it down. 7:50, brush teeth, stared at phone. 7:45, commute, listen to radio. 12:100, lunch, gossiped with coworkers. When you see it on paper, you will find the dead space. You will find the hours you are wasting. Reclaim those hours. Eliminate the distractions. You don't need more talent. You need more focus. We have built the body. We have calloused the mind. We have learned to wage war against time and distractions. But what happens when you reach the top of the mountain? What happens when you become one of the elite? Do you stop, or do you find a bigger mountain? Welcome to Part 4. Chapter 9, Uncommon Amongst Uncommon. By this point in his life, David Goggins had achieved what many considered impossible. He was a Navy SEAL. He was an ultra-marathon runner. He was arguably one of the fittest men on the planet. He had entered the realm of the uncommon. Most people are common. They live within the safety of societal norms. They seek comfort. Then there are the uncommon, the achievers, the elite athletes, the special forces soldiers. They have separated themselves from the herd. But Goggins noticed a dangerous trap even within the elite. He noticed that many people, once they earned the title of SEAL or Ranger, stopped grinding. They rested on their laurels. They let their ego tell them they had made it. They became common again, just within a smaller elite circle. Goggins refused this. He wanted to be uncommon amongst uncommon. He didn't just stay a SEAL. He decided to go to Army Ranger School, a premier leadership course for the U.S. Army. It was a completely different branch of the military. He was an outsider. He was sleep-deprived, starving, and pushed to the brink of hallucination for over 2 months. He didn't just graduate, he graduated as the enlisted honor man, the top graduate of the class. He proved that his drive wasn't a fluke. It wasn't about being a SEAL. It was about a standard of excellence that traveled with him wherever he went. He realized that greatness is not a permanent status. It is a perishable skill. The moment you stop proving yourself, you begin to rot. You have to earn your respect every single day. The title on your uniform or the degree on your wall means nothing if you are not bringing excellence to the present moment. Key lesson: beware of the arrival fallacy. Do not think that once you achieve a certain goal, you are finished. Complacency is the enemy of greatness. Even if you are the best in your field, you must continue to act like a hungry underdog. If you are the smartest person in the room, you are in the wrong room. Find a new challenge. Reset your zero. Be the wolf that never stops hunting. Chapter 10: The Empowerment of Failure. Goggins was now looking for a new way to suffer, a new way to test the limits of the human machine. He found the Guinness World Record for pull-ups in 24 hours. The record stood at 4,020. He decided to break it on live television to raise money for charity. He trained relentlessly. He built a custom pull-up bar. He felt ready. The day came. Cameras were rolling. Goggins started pulling. But something was wrong. The bar had too much give. It was shaking. The friction tore the skin off his hands within the first few hours. He was in agony. His muscles were failing differently than in training. He failed. He quit in front of a national audience. Most people would be crushed. They would hide. They would make excuses. The bar was bad. The lights were too hot. Goggins went home and did an after-action report, AAR. This is a military tool used to analyze missions. He didn't beat himself up emotionally, he dissected the failure clinically. He asked, "Why did I fail?" The bar was unstable. My grip technique was wrong for that volume. I didn't manage the lactic acid buildup. He recovered. He healed his hands. He set up a second attempt. He failed again. The skin on his palms peeled off entirely. It looked like raw meat. He was physically destroyed. Now the doubt crept in. Maybe he just couldn't do it. Maybe 4,020 was too many. But he looked at the data. He looked at his AAR. He adjusted the bar rigidity. He changed the foam padding on the floor to reduce energy leak. He changed his gloves. He went back for a third attempt. This time it wasn't about hype. It was about execution. He did the pull-ups in small sets. He managed the pain. He ignored the bleeding. He finished with 4,030 pull-ups in 17 hours. He broke the world record. Key lesson: the after-action report. Failure is not the end. It is data. When you fail, and you will fail if you are aiming high, do not let your emotions hijack the lesson. Sit down with a pen and paper. Write out exactly what went wrong. Was it preparation? Was it mindset? Was it equipment? Don't use the AAR to judge yourself. Use it to fix the problem. Schedule your failure, plan for it, and then re-engage. The only true failure is quitting without learning. Goggins teaches us that you can fail twice spectacularly and still be a world champion on the third try if you have the courage to analyze your defeat. You might think that after breaking a Guinness World Record, after becoming a Navy SEAL, after running 135 miles through Death Valley, David Goggins would finally rest. You might think he found his finish line. But in the world of David Goggins, there are no finish lines. There are only mile markers. And shortly after his triumphs, his body presented him with the ultimate bill for his suffering: the crash and the discovery. Following the pull-up record, Goggins' health began to deteriorate rapidly. He wasn't just tired, he was dying. His body was shutting down. He struggled to get out of bed. The man who could run 100 miles could barely walk down the hallway. He went to the doctors. They ran tests, and what they found shocked them. They discovered a congenital heart defect. David had an atrial septal defect, a hole in his heart the size of a poker chip. This meant that for his entire life, his heart had been functioning at roughly 75% capacity. The blood that was supposed to go to his muscles was leaking back into his heart. Let that sink in. The hell weeks, the ultramarathons, the pull-up records, the ranger school. He had done all of it with a broken heart. He had been operating on 3 cylinders while everyone else had 4. This revelation could have been a moment of despair. Instead, for Goggins, it was validation. It was proof of the power of the mind. If he could achieve the impossible with a broken engine, what was the limit of human potential? It proved his theory. The physical body is merely the hardware. The mind is the software that drives it. If the software is strong enough, it can override catastrophic hardware failure. Rebuilding the temple. He underwent heart surgery to repair the hole, but the recovery was not the end of his pain. Years of running on broken bones and pushing through injuries had left his body tight, knotted, and frozen. He had huge knots in his neck and back. He was in constant agony. Doctors told him he would never run again. They told him to manage the pain with medication. Goggins rejected the diagnosis. He realized he had spent his life callousing his mind, but he had neglected the maintenance of his vessel. He began a new obsession: stretching. This wasn't a 10-minute warm-up. This was war against his own fascia. He stretched for 6, sometimes 8 hours a day. He studied anatomy. He visualized the knots untying. He treated stretching with the same intensity as he treated Navy SEAL training. Slowly, painfully, he unlocked his body. He regained his mobility. He returned to running. He proved the experts wrong one last time. He showed that we have the power to heal ourselves if we are willing to endure the tedious, quiet, unglamorous pain of rehabilitation. The final verdict: peace through war. Why? That is the question that haunts the reader throughout the book. Why suffer this much? Why run until your feet bleed? Why destroy yourself? In the final moments of his story, Goggins gives us the answer. He didn't do it for the medals. He threw his medals in a box in the garage. He didn't do it for the fame. He did it to find peace. He explains that true peace is not found by hiding from the world. It is not found on a comfortable couch. It is found on the other side of suffering. When you push yourself to the absolute limit, when you face your darkest demons and conquer them, you strip away the ego. You strip away the insecurity. You are left with a naked truth. You are enough. Goggins found God not in a church, but in the suffering. He found himself in the sweat and the blood. He realized that the only person he was ever competing against was himself. Conclusion: what if? As we close the book on Can't Hurt Me, Goggins leaves us with a final challenge. He asks us to look at our own lives. We all live with a governor on our minds. We all have that voice that says, "Stop, it's too hard, you've done enough." He asks us to ask the question, what if? What if you didn't stop? What if you woke up an hour earlier? What if you attacked your fears instead of avoiding them? What if you are capable of so much more than you can imagine? The story of David Goggins is not a command for you to run 100 miles or become a Navy SEAL. It is a command for you to stop making excuses. It is a mirror. When you look at his life, you are forced to look at your own. You have no excuse. You have the potential. The only thing standing in your way is you. The world will try to hurt you. Life will try to break you. But if you master your mind, if you callous your spirit, and if you refuse to quit, they can't hurt you.